东西我就比较没有办法。可是我如果有什么问题 ，I'll try to explain 。
OK， 那好，那你就先用中文给我们做一个简单介绍，然后我们下面就用英文讲，好吧？你给我们介绍一下你的经历，然后
好，My name is Sidney Wu， 我是吴信良，我是在美国出生的，我已经住在尔湾30年了，我有两个儿子。2个都是尔湾学校 IUSD 的学生，over the last 其实已经差不多10年了。我老大现在是才刚进去那个9年级 high school， 那我老二是在 Vista Verde K through 8 middle school。我们是我跟我老婆是在尔湾已经做很多那个 volunteer work。那今年因为很多问题，很多那个学校的concern， 我就觉得今年是很重要，需要那个 advocate for 我们的小孩子。那我是没有选过那个public office， 可是我是觉得我们今年真的是很多那个很重要的要那个处理 take care， 所以我就想说，我今年要 try to do my best 去帮忙我们学校跟学生。
Okay,
and then I'll go into English. Yeah,
okay.
So the English is going to be a little longer, so I think it'll explain a lot about me. And
Okay.
I appreciate you guys listening to me in English. But if there's any questions, please let me know. So again, thank you, Sarah, and the Chinese American Association of Orange County for hosting and inviting me to this forum. My name is Sidney Wu. I'm running for the Irvine School Board in Trustee Area 3. I am the son of immigrants who moved here from Taiwan to pursue degrees in higher education and grew up in a family of teachers. My maternal grandfather was a teacher and a school principal in Taiwan, and my mother and 4 of her siblings followed in his footsteps and became educators. My mother did, however, switch gears later on and help my dad as my dad was trying to start a small business here in the United States. She ended up going on to help his endeavors, and they were instrumental in my development. But they worked many late hours to make ends meet, and we basically, I grew up as a latchkey kid. So I basically had my parents at work until 7 p.m. and I kind of did my own thing. I did attend Orange Unified School District Public Schools. I went to UC Irvine, where I received my bachelor's degree in political science with a minor in management. And then I went to Carnegie Mellon University in Pennsylvania, where I received my MBA. I moved back to Irvine after grad school and went into consulting and worked with several Fortune 500 technology companies. I felt like my career at the time was on the right trajectory, and it was an exciting time for me, but then I got a giant curveball thrown at me. Both of my parents unfortunately passed away in an accident when I was 28 years old. And so I had to really reevaluate what was important to me. People often ask, why do I volunteer so much for our kids and, with their school and in sports? And I'd have to say that losing my parents early really guided me to want to be there to spend more time with my own family and be there for my kids, because you never know, life's pretty fleeting. I'm now a 30-year resident of Irvine. My wife, Annie, and I have 2 sons who have been students in IUSD at Vista Verde K through 8 school. Annie's very involved at school in the classroom for GROW, math tiles. As the kids were growing up, served as room moms for several years and volunteered in the PTA. She was also involved in the planning of many of our foundation events because we're fortunate enough to have one at Vista Verde. I'm also a very involved parent. As I just mentioned, it was something that became important to me when I was having my own children. I wanted to be there for them. And so I've worked closely with our school as a parent volunteer in the classrooms, as a chaperone of overnight field trips, member of the PTA, served proudly as president of our Vista Verde Foundation for 3 years, and I'm still an active member raising monies to bring technology and capital improvements to our school. During the time on the foundation board, I've been fortunate enough to bring about $400,000 to our school for improvements. So we've really done well in terms of bridging the gap in the school budgets. During my tenure, we've been able to achieve 1-to-1. We were the first school to go 1-to-1 on Chromebooks, as well as create collaborative workspaces in our pods and purchase new school equipment for the science equipment for the middle school. We've worked in collaboration with the PTA to raise monies, understand what programs need to be supported, and share funds to bring in items that are needed. For example, we bought new lunch tables because our old lunch tables were disgusting. And so we bought new ones that were easier to clean because we don't have the custodial staff that's able to be there to ensure the health and safety of our children. I'm also proud of the fact that due to the hard work of our teachers, administration, and our parent community at Vista Verde, Vista Verde was announced this year as the one and only National Blue Ribbon School in all of Irvine. Outside of school, I was also an AYSO and Slammers coach for 4 years. I think a lot of us might have been out there on the field with our kids in soccer. It was where my wife and I actually got our first taste of volunteering in youth sports, both as a coach and Annie as our team mom. I've also had the honor of running one of our amazing Irvine Swim League teams. So if any of you have swim children, you guys might know ISL. And I was president of the South Irvine Dolphins for 3 years and enjoy spending summers watching our kids compete in the pool. It truly takes an entire village to run one of these ISL teams, and we are always so fortunate to have our parents step up for the good of our kids and swimmers. Both my sons do swim year-round with Aquazot swim team, and my younger also plays water polo at Imperial and football through the Matt Leinart League. Obviously, it's challenging to get the kids to all of the activities as an Uber driver, as I'm sure all of us are, which I'm sure all of you understand firsthand, but it's totally worth it to see the kids active and doing what they love. I've also volunteered as a coach for the Irvine Youth Sports Series through our school district. And my humble dad brag is that we brought home a couple of trophies with my kids' 4th and 6th grade team. On that note, I think it's important to make a mention that when we first went into quarantine, I realized how important having the outdoor activities and sports programs were for the kids and their overall mental health. I mean, being stuck at home playing video games is not exactly the best for them. So we were very cautious for the first few months, as I'm sure all of us were. But eventually we realized that we needed to let the kids get out. And so as a family, we started doing mountain biking. I taught the kids, how to boogie board. We went surfing when the beaches opened. And during the summer period, the facilities were still shut down. And so it was very tough because our swim team didn't have any place to swim. So I worked really hard to get the Woodbridge pool back for our Aquazot swim team. That's where our team practices, and made sure that guidelines were in place and got a firsthand opportunity to advocate for our kids through the district to be back in the water safely. And I'm happy to report that we've had no COVID cases since we got back on the deck on June 15th. So tells you that we can actually do some outdoor activities with the children safely. And that's a good thing, I think. I apologize for going on and on about my involvement with my kids' activities because I think it's important for me to highlight that I am very involved. I am one of those dads that is both at school and in the community. That was something that my parents never had time to commit to when I was younger because they were always working late nights and working hard for our family. But I think it's absolutely vital for our children to be active and for the good of their mental health, especially in these tough times. I've never run for public office, so I'm not a politician. I'm doing this because I was concerned that our kids would fall behind. When we went to emergency distance learning, EDL, back in March, I don't think it was a great experience for my family, for my sons, Nathan and Evan. And I know there was a lot of concern in the overall parent community. And so I've stepped back in some of my leadership roles on our school foundation and on our swim team at the Dolphins. And so I have the necessary time to be a school board member. We think of it as a part-time oversight job, but in this environment, board members are obligated to spend more time finding solutions to some of the difficult challenges that we face. I think we have improved a bit with our 3 models, and the teachers certainly have been working extremely hard to ensure that our children are learning. However, I do think that continuous improvement is warranted. And I know there is still a tremendous learning curve, both from teachers and our students and parents. I know my wife, Annie, and I had many questions before the first day of school. We weren't sure how to read the cohort sheets. We didn't know where to get our textbooks, how Canvas would be used, what expectations would be in terms of attendance, who do we call for questions, who do we call for attendance. There were so many questions, and I think there still are. Better communication between the district and school board with a greater community, I think would certainly help moving forward. I really want to make sure that we can open our schools safely, and that includes continual monitoring, not just that we can open, but continual monitoring of state and county health guidelines moving forward. We signed up for IVA as a family because we were a little wary about going back to physical instruction at the time. And I know some teachers and parents really don't have the benefit of even choosing. Schools essentially daycare for those who need to go back to work and do not have the benefit of working virtually from home. So I think IUSD did a good job in terms of giving us choices. And I think we need to take a look at that, but with the goal of opening our schools safely eventually. We should be empathetic to that fact, and we need to ensure that we give our teachers and students our full support and necessary PPEs for the classrooms. We must comply with state requirements, obviously, to reopen, but we need to ensure even more that our teachers and students are kept safe, not just because of some political obligation. I'd like to even propose maybe forming a committee where parents and educators will have a chance to meet together and be kept abreast as to the district's plans and give input to thoughts on reopening with the CDPH, California Department of Public Health, and Orange County Public Health guidelines in mind. And also bring ideas on best practices. Other districts have things going on that maybe we can learn from them. We should take a look at best practices and make sure we are doing everything we can to make sure that our schools are safe from COVID. Children indeed do better in the classrooms with their teachers and their peers. And so I will continuously look towards the end goal of opening our classrooms. I want our classrooms to open, but with the goal of being safe when we do so. I want to also ensure that IUSD has the necessary funds, obviously given the difficulties brought to the economy by this pandemic, and to make certain that teachers have the support and tools they need to educate our children. We unfortunately are one of the lowest funded school districts in IUSD, but fortunately we will be okay this calendar year. There was a talk about possibly taking a 10% haircut in terms of our budgets this year. They've now pushed it out to possibly 2021 and 2022. And if we end up having that 10% cut at that point, we're going to have to take a look and see how we deal with that financial crisis. So it's something that is in the horizon, but it's not in the near term. Outside of school and youth sports, I've been on IUSD board president Betty Carroll's, I've been the appointee, I should say, to her, to the ISD Finance Committee. We were disbanded in 2018 by the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, John Fogarty, because at the time, nobody saw any recession. IUSD was in a good place, and that obviously has changed. So it makes sense to restart the committee to be sure that we are forward-looking 3 years, which is usually what it is with our district, and make sure that we as a district are okay financially. I'm also the current City of Irvine Commissioner of Transportation, and I have significant experience working to improve the traffic flow in our rapidly growing city. I'm familiar with making policy, and yes, I know there's still a lot of work to be done, but we're definitely working on it. But the experience has given me a good foundation to understand how do we deal with all the growth. As a city, Irvine has grown so big. The original master plan was for Irvine to be about 300,000 people, and we're at about 280,000 people now. So making sure that expectations are set and making sure that we're able to handle the capacity is going to be something that we need to be cognizant of, because Irvine is an incredible place to live, and families want to come here for all the amenities, also for the incredible schools. I think that's why a lot of us moved here. So I believe my background and experience have prepared me to serve as an IUSD school board member with the skill set for the challenges that lie ahead. I have a long history and record of being a community leader and collaborator, and I am very excited in this cycle to be a candidate for Irvine School Board in Trustee Area number 3. So I hope to have the opportunity to continue working for the good of our children, teachers, and family moving forward. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here today.
Well, thanks so much for such a detailed introduction. You answered a lot of my following questions already.
I figured some of that was probably in there. Yeah. So I'm like, I think some of it might be self-explanatory.
Yeah, and also I'm sure that you got a lot of admirers from the audience already. Just hear you talking how much involvement you have to your kids' life. You know, I know a lot of moms are heavily involved, but for daddy involved so much is really, you know, something.
It's been a good experience.
People, yeah,
a lot of people ask me, do I work at the school? And so I tell them no, but I'm very lucky to be able to volunteer. I have the time. And so I think it's going to take a lot of commitment in the school board, especially, like I said, it's just such a difficult time right now. It's very different from anything we've ever encountered.
Yeah, it's we like mom volunteer a lot at school, like I volunteer a lot. We're always looking for that.
That's what I hear. Yeah, it's good. I love it. We actually are very fortunate because we have our foundation, and so we've had some of the dads start stepping up now, and so it's great to have such a wonderful parent community in Irvine.
Yeah, that's good. So well, I guess you touched a little bit already, but I still want to ask you, what is the main reason for you to decide to run for the school board?
I think the biggest issue that I had was when emergency distance learning came about in March, and then we had 2 days basically to say shut down the schools. My kids would be on computer for 20, 30 minutes, and then they're done. And so there was no synchronous instruction. They didn't get anything in terms of any additional instruction from probably March till the end of the school year. And so I was concerned about that. Betty Carroll, who is the current school board president, is a good friend of mine. And so I was able to go to her and ask her the questions about, you know, what are we looking at? What's going to happen over the summer? Where are we going to be? Vista Verde is actually a year-round school. So we should go back to school in July. And so I was worried that with 4 months, there was no way to know what July would look like. I'm also very, you know, close to our school principal because I've worked at school for so long. And so I asked him, I said, what are the challenges in terms of getting our kids back to school? He was worried about the scheduling. And so we do have a very, very strong teachers union here in Irvine. And so they have a lot of ideas and thoughts. We actually, unfortunately, in our school, on the survey, had a lot of teachers who decided they didn't want to come back to school. So if we were able to do, you know, in physical in classroom instruction, how did we deal with that? So there's a lot of questions logistically. How do we deal with that? Fortunately, throughout Irvine, the survey has shown that more than 50% of teachers do want to come back. Most of our special education teachers do want to come back. That's great. At our school, 31 out of 36 teachers did not want to come back. And so there were challenges logistically there. So how do we open up our schools safely, given the COVID environment? How do we deal with the logistics of planning for our teachers? Because we have 36,000 students in Irvine. We have about 1,680 teachers, educators in all of Irvine. And they're going to be put into different models. So we have the traditional model, the hybrid model, and the IVA, the virtual academy. And so they're going to have to be placed. And the scheduling was something that I thought was going to be a nightmare. And it is still something that is a challenge. There are certain teachers that refuse to come back, and so they took the year off. And so that's going to be something that we need to work with the teachers union with. So we need a strong hand in the district to say, we do need our frontline workers. We need our teachers, our heroes, to come back. If we look at Irvine, and if we take a look, and I might digress a little bit, if we take a look at the county and what Governor Newsom has said so far in terms of how do we get through the 4 phases, we're right now in phase 2. We're in the red phase. We technically, if we just look at Irvine numbers, could be orange if not yellow. So if we look at IUSD as being all Irvine children, truthfully, Irvine is safe enough to open. We are in phase 4. We're in yellow, but we have to go with, you know, the whole county. So we have Santa Ana, Anaheim, and we understand there's high density housing there, and there's people that are, you know, essential workers. And so obviously there are higher cases over there. So Irvine, if I look at Irvine, we're pretty safe. And maybe I'm answering one of your questions a little ahead as to how IUSD is doing, but we're doing pretty good. But how do we open it up? Because psychologically, we still have a lot of fear. And yes, COVID still exists. But as I said in my opening statement, I think kids do better in school with the teachers, with their peers. And so my idea for me is I would like to look and see how, as IUSD, can we be a front runner? Can we be a vanguard to opening our schools? Of course, with the thought that it has to be safe. If cases change, if the guidelines change, we obviously have to look at that because we are under CDPH and OCPH guidelines. But that would be, probably my number one concern. And second to that is because of the pandemic, our economy obviously is being hurt. And so we need to make sure that we have the funds available. We're using about 5% of our $400 billion budget this year in order to do PPEs and also changes in the classroom. So we are putting in HEPA filters. We are also doing some changes so that, we have modules that can maybe be outside. I know at Vista Verde, we're cutting out a big concrete area in our atrium so that it's not that hot and we can actually move, seats and chairs outside so that we can actually have outdoor instruction. So there's going to be a lot of fiscal challenges ahead of us. And so we need to take a look at that too. And so I think, between opening our schools safely, the fiscal challenges, and of course, most importantly, making sure that our children get the support, our teachers get the support, and the academic excellence in Irvine doesn't change. Those are the three top priorities that I think we have here in IUSD.
Okay, thanks, Sidney. So you see all these issues you want to solve. So you decided, so I'm going to be careful so we can have more to say. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's the way to go.
I have 50% of my friends who congratulated me, and I have 50% of my friends who asked me, what are you doing? And I think it really takes people who have been involved with the schools, people who are at the front lines, to see what's going on. And so I've been there. I've been working with the school on capital improvements for the better part of 8 years now. And so I know what our schools need. I work with our principal on our technology, on improving our bandwidth, on getting the Chromebooks. I've worked on improving our modules, our pods, to make it so that the kids can have a collaborative workspace. And now, unfortunately, the collaborative workspaces probably cannot exist for the time being, but we have mobile furniture. And so we can move, furniture outside and have instruction maybe in fresh air. We have options, and I think that's a good thing. But of course, we have to follow the public health guidelines. Okay,
thanks, Sidney. And my next one did talk about, I did want to ask you what's the three top challenges. So you already mentioned that is a pandemic, the financial, and the teacher. The third one is the teacher quality. Is that what's the third one?
Quality. Actually, I would say that our teachers are some of the biggest assets that we have in Irvine. Over the years, if you take a look at the instruction in Irvine, we've been one of the, if not the top school district, given how much funds we get. We get in the state about $1,000 less per child. And we get, if we look at federal funding, about $5,000 less per child. The reason for that, and I don't want to get into mundane details, is because we have a local controlled funding formula that we utilize for our average daily attendance. In Irvine, we have what they use in the state, which is a base grant, then another layer. So you get a base grant, every district gets a base grant. You get another layer for foster children, English learners, and free and reduced meal, meaning Title I children. And so you'll get a little bit more money for those children. Then there's a third layer. The third layer is if you have 55% who are in the foster children, English learner, and free and reduced meals, then you'll get another amount of money. We don't get that third piece in Irvine because we're not over 55%. We're probably 20% in terms of free and reduced meals, and our average is nowhere close to that. But LA Unified School District, Santa Ana Unified School District, some of those other school districts actually get more funding because they do need that for certain parts of their population. I would say it's a good thing that in Irvine that we don't hit 55%. We're very fortunate, but it limits how much monies we get.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think a lot of people probably are surprised to hear that Irvine gets such low funding with such good quality of education.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. So I would say our teachers are top notch. I think, the business relationships that we have here, both through the Irvine Company and 5 Point, have helped. I know everyone talks about developers, whether you like them or not. We work with them in terms of getting the land, having the schools built. And for those of you who like numbers, if we look at building a school, the average school in Irvine costs about $100 million. We fund that. And so, we do what we can with those companies, but we have great local business partnerships. Most importantly, I think we have some of the best teachers in the nation. And so that's what keeps IUSD, IUSD.
Good, good. So that's bring my next questions. I think you mentioned that the one of the most important thing for Irvine is the teacher quality. So other than the teacher quality, what do you think why IUSD is so good, and how do you evaluate their education quality? We always think IUSD is an excellent top school, but I still want to get your opinion on that.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think how we've been able to maintain our excellence, like I just said, our teachers are some of the best. We also have a lot of collaboration within the communities. I know there's a lot of parent involvement within our schools. That certainly helps. So that's something that we're fortunate to have. In terms of our schools and where they're moving, are they doing well? I think overall our testing, if we take a look at our standardized tests, we're still some of the best. As I mentioned again, we do have schools that are always up for gold ribbon, blue ribbon. I think that that shows just how well our instruction is, although we are going through a transition. And by that I mean I have heard that some of the schools where we've had teachers that have been there for 20, 30 years, it's gotten to the point where perhaps it's almost like a tenure. In fact, it is a tenure. And so I think we can take a look at it and see how can we improve. I moved to my area, which is by UC Irvine, because we wanted to go to university high school. But we've also heard a lot of parents complain about the instruction over the last few years, and also the difficulties, especially given mental health issues with our children nowadays. So I think we need to evaluate a lot of the things that are going on. We can't just rely and rest on our laurels. I know IUSD has always done well. Our test scores are great, but that could be also a function of just our parents and our student community. We need to take a look and also evaluate as to how our teachers are doing. How is the curriculum? Are we keeping up with national standards? And to ensure that IUSD continues with its excellence. I think right now we're still doing very well, but that goes with just evaluating our curriculum and making sure that we continue to see if what we're doing is the right thing for our kids.
Thanks, Sidney. And speak of that, and I know in the last, my two kids also gone through the IUSD, but in the last few years, there's some trend, and a lot of parents are not happy about. For example, the integrated science, integrated math. There's a lot of debate about if these are the good trend or the bad trend, the good or bad. So, what's your opinion on that?
Sure, I will be honest with you. So in terms of going through the curriculum with my children, and so my son just started 9th grade. So I've seen what they've done from elementary through middle school. I can tell you, I don't like Common Core. I'm not 100% happy with the way that it's taught. I can't fathom some of the ways that they're doing their math, they're doing their science. It's not what I grew up with, but here's where we're at with integrated curriculum. Most of the world is utilizing integrated curriculum. Right now with Common Core, they're using the time so that the teachers can kind of learn through professional development and integrated curriculum. My worry though is I grew up with the two different pathways are traditional. So let's just use math as an example. Algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2. Then we have, the new pathway, which is the integrated. And integrated could mean multiple pathways. It could mean science and math together. But if we just look at math, we're looking at maybe, pre-calculus being the closest thing where you have some algebra, you have some geometry, everything's integrated. I worry that we're not quite there yet. Our curriculum isn't quite up to standard. I know North Carolina and Utah, a lot of teachers are looking at doing their own textbooks because there's just not enough out there. And I also worry about, and I think you and I had this discussion last time, Sarah, where, I want to make sure that our kids are prepared, both for their AP exams, their standardized exams, and also for the future. Integrated curriculum is something that everyone says it's to prepare our children for the 21st century. But I think we lose some of it. I think the original silos that we used to have for mathematics and for science and for English, now it's English learning arts, was fine. That doesn't mean that I'm not willing to look ahead and see if we can, do something that's better for the future. But I think it takes a lot more evaluation. Right now, my opinion is that we're not there yet for integrated curriculum. I know a lot of the colleges are now taking scores for integrated curriculum, math 1, 2, 3, and that might alleviate some of the concerns. But I still am more of a traditionalist, so I want to see more. So in a roundabout way, I don't think we're ready. I think the professional development has to be there. There's not enough textbooks or curriculum that is already set for integrated, math, science. And I think we need to, as a district, continue to evaluate, although unfortunately, a lot of our curriculum comes down from the California Department of Education. So as a local school board, we have to take what they say is almost law, but we can pick our curriculum. We can pick our textbooks. We can see what we can do that maybe makes more sense for the kids. Right now, this current school board, there's 4 school board members that have their kids are all graduated out of school. And so I'm not sure how much they actually get to evaluate the current, curriculum. I have my kids in school. And so as a parent, I'm obviously concerned, but I think there's still a shortfall with integrated curriculum.
Thanks. And so if you are elected, other than the challenges we talk about, what are the top changes you want to make and the improvement you want to make?
I think I'd like more parent involvement. I see that, again, I've been involved with the PTA and I've been involved with the foundation. We also have Irvine Public Schools Foundation. And we have we have a big immigrant community that doesn't quite get as involved. And I understand that fear. I know my mom and dad didn't really get involved at school because, they were new immigrants, if you want to put it that way, they were busy. But I think the things that I'd like to see happening is more involvement, getting the schools to get the parents to buy into things that are going on with the PTA at their schools. I think a rising tide lifts all ships, all boats. And so I think, right now with the budget shortfall, I'd like to see, parents get involved. We have a great program at Vista Verde that I'd like to share with the rest of IUSD. I'd like to have sister, schools that I can show them how to do a fundraiser. I can show them how we've been able to do PTA. Not every PTA is equitable too. I know everyone talks about, oh, well, every school has a PTA. We have the one and only running foundation right now. That's not fair. So I'd like to show them what we do with the foundation, but even the PTA, we have 20 vice presidents, I think, in our PTA. Coverdale, my friend, is the president over there, and they have 3 members. And the 3 members are on their executive committee. It's the president, her, the vice president, and the treasurer. And they have no parent involvement. So I think we really need to get more parent involvement within the school district. I think that would really, go a long ways, both for the school and to, incorporate some of our, new immigrants to show them what we can do. I know back in Taiwan, I've talked to my aunts and uncles and my parents about this. There was no volunteering in the classroom. They didn't volunteer in the classroom. And so I think, at our school, we have probably at any certain time, several parents always helping out. And I think that would help and go a long way. The other thing with IUSD that I think we can do better is we can probably take a look and see where can we get more funding, because we do have a lot of special education. We have, free and reduced meals, English as a second language, a lot of adult education. How do we get those grants? And so we do need to work with our legislators in order to see if we can't get more funds. As I mentioned, we're one of the lowest. I don't believe that we need to raise taxes in this environment, with the fact that, we're in a bad economy. But at the same time, we need to take a look and see how do we, perhaps get more funds from the state that has been put aside. And at the same time, we need to take a look at our balance sheets and see, if we're going to take $20 million and put it into the security and safety of our children, then where are we going to have austerity measures? One of the things that we've looked at is, where are we in terms of, reductions? So we have a lot of contract work, and a lot of contract work, if you pay up ahead, you can get 2 to 5% off. And if you're looking at a $10 million, contract, that could mean a lot of money. So I think bringing that experience in the business world and going and taking a look at how we pay our contract work could make a difference too in terms of how we save. So I think we're going to have to, be fiscally tight over the next few years, at least during this economic downturn.
Thanks, Sidney. And so, you mentioned that, the parents' involvement is really critical. And, during my time with my kids at IUSD, I was really involved. But I think it was, in the middle elementary school, parents are really involved. But when you get to the high school, the involvement from parents getting less and less. And I think,
I think, I think there's two things that we can do better. I think the arts, we can certainly, look at that and see what we can do. We lose a lot of students to OSHA, and I understand that. The other thing is, and I know this is kind of new, I know in my generation, when I was growing up, my parents didn't put a lot of emphasis on sports, but we lose a lot of students to different districts, different, leagues because of sports. And it's not something that we concentrate heavily on here in IUSD, but it's something that we should probably perhaps take a look at. I know in our Asian community now, a lot of our kids are involved in the arts, in sports. And I think, our parents can get involved in boosters, and that I think builds a community. As the parents get involved, even if it's only, a few hours every so often, every blue moon, it just brings you into the community. And I think that goes a long ways. I've met so many friends over the last decade through my kids and their parents, the children, my kids, their classmates and their parents. And it's been great. I mean, we have a wonderful friendship, but we also work together for the good of our schools.
So, and you mentioned that, so I actually, this is a question I do want to ask you.
Sure.
Other than all these outstanding, excellent program IUSD provide, and what additional program you think IUS should consider? You mentioned that a little bit about art. Anything else, and other things you think?
We actually are moving. I've been working with the PTA in terms of programs after school. So we know we have our ACE program through IPSF. And I think that helps out both in terms of just having the children at school a little longer, and also to allow them to have an experience in something that's not necessarily in the classrooms. But we're also working on a program called AFA, and that's an academic excellence for all. And so we're looking at programs, mathematics, languages that are taught by parents after school as a volunteer basis. And those are basically free. It's a volunteer basis. The PTA will, put some money in for facilities. I think IUSD can work together with that. So we could have more programs after school, much like what we do in Asia. I think in Asia, I remember, seeing my cousins and everyone, 90% would finish school and then they take a little break and then they're off to an after school program. So I think the after school programs could really help a lot of the parents who need after school daycare. The other thing is we could actually provide programs through IUSD that may not be in our normal general curriculum. We have a lot of parents who would love to teach those who are in the sciences, those who are in the arts, those who can volunteer their time. And I think that would be a huge benefit to our children to have those programs available to them. And AFA, by the way, like I said, it is something that was created because IPSF does the ACE programs, but you have to pay for those. AFA would allow for even those people under Title I to actually get programs that can enhance, their understanding of things. And so they'll get extra help in English, in math, in the STEM sciences. And I think that would be a good thing to go a long ways with our children.
Well, that sounds a great idea to get the parents really involved. I know
It's fun to
that
see.
yeah,
It-
Irvine
it's
has a
great.
lot of talented
Oh,
parents.
we've had
They will
doctors
love,
come in.
yeah.
Yeah, we've had doctors come in and do some tutorials about the human body. And oh, this is, I mean, it's a lot of fun to see the parents get really excited about teaching what they know.
Yeah, that sounds a really exciting idea. And so earlier you mentioned that, Irvine is really diversified community. And as you probably know as well, that in the last few years, there are so many Chinese immigrants come to Irvine because the excellent quality of education.
Sure.
And I think that some of these kids are facing a lot of challenges. Do you think IUSD have done enough to help these students? And if you are elected, anything additional and the school can do to help them?
I think overall, IUSD's done a fairly good job. I do think that we could have programs where, and this as a personal, I guess, experience, we had a friend of ours who moved here from China and didn't really know a whole lot about what was going on. So my wife and I acted as mentors to tell them, these are the programs that are available for your children. These are the things that we can do that can really benefit in terms of having the kids make new friends, because I know that's always tough when you're a new immigrant who doesn't speak much English. Resources, what's available out there. There are certain associations, just like the Chinese American Association of Orange County, that they don't know. They don't have any idea that they exist. And so I think what we could do, IUSD can certainly do more in terms of creating programs that allow for the parents to kind of learn a little bit more about IUSD, even translations, simple translations, things of that nature. There's not always, if I go on IUSD's website, I don't always find everything. I know they've started doing things in Chinese and different languages, but even then, the information is not always disseminated properly. So I think what we can do as a district is try to get, some mentorships, basically have families who work with families who are newly here to the United States and help them kind of move along and understand what programs are available, both to them and their children. And I've seen that work at our school because we do meet, I meet with a lot of the new immigrants who come here and they have a lot of questions. And so I think that's a grassroots movement. I think that's really more from the community. And I think IUSD could help push that. If you're willing to be a mentor, hey, sign up and help your parents and families who are newly here to the United States. I think that would go a long ways.
Thank you. And so, we have a really big percentage of Asian community, including yourself. Do you see the Asian in terms of value and priority? Are we in line with the rest of the population, or you think we have some special priority that is different as other population? And how do you think how we should address that?
Absolutely. I think there's a split now in terms of the Asians who came first generation and the Asians maybe later on. But I think in the short answer, I think we're aligned with everybody else. We want what's best for our children. We want the best education. That's why we moved to Irvine. Our schools are some of the best, and I think we are definitely fortunate to be here. In terms of expectations, I think Asian parents do have a higher expectation of their kids. There is generally I want my children to do well and they need to go to better schools. I think overall though, here in Irvine, we're not too far from the other parents. The running joke is that Asian parents are tiger parents, but I think everybody here just wants what's best for their children. The other side of it though, I think that Asian parents have gotten better at is the mental health aspect of their children and their needs, because there is a lot of time that is utilized in extracurricular that once upon a time, maybe Asian kids didn't get involved with. Like I said, a lot of Asian kids are now involved in sports. And so how do you balance that? How do you balance that with school? But I think overall, the expectation from the Asian American community, even from new immigrants, is very aligned and with the rest of the population. And I think IUSD is one of the most diverse. In fact, Irvine is one of the most diverse cities. And so there's an understanding that there are needs and there are expectations that our immigrant population has. And I think I think overall Irvine has addressed them very well.
Thanks, Sidney. Just let me talk a little bit to the audience. 大家好，我关于 Sidney question 我快问完了，所以你们要有什么问题的话，你们就把你们的问题 type in 到那个 chat box， 然后我这边完了以后，我会go through 你们的 question. Okay. Sidney, my next question is not related to the school board, okay, but is the topic that is pretty hot recently. One is the Proposition 16, another is BLM movement. So I just like to get your view on these two hot topics.
Sure, absolutely. Today in this election cycle, there's a lot of issues, obviously. I am very much for diversity. I do think Black lives matter, but I think all lives matter. I think, at the end of the day, we have the benefit of teaching our children how not to bully, how not to be racist, but I don't believe in the BLM movement itself in terms of, if you're talking about the protests and the organized groups that are putting out the protests, I think we are one of the most diverse cities. I don't believe in defunding our police. And so I think celebrating our diversity is fine. Celebrating, with our children, what other cultures are is important, but all lives matter. And in terms of Proposition 16, that's an easy one for me. That's a no on 16. If we're going to talk about diversity and not using race as a prerequisite, then I absolutely think that Proposition 16 divides us. There's no reason that somebody who is of Asian American or even white descent should have to work harder. I think it should be a merit-based system. And admissions into schools, I think it should be merit-based. And so I'm absolutely a no on 16. I don't want to divide us. I don't think anything should be based off of race.
Thank you. And you mentioned that this is your first time you run official election. What kind of challenge you are facing, and how can we help you?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, it's been interesting. I've met some people. We've had a lot of Zooms and interviews, and this is great. I've been able to meet a lot of wonderful people. I really do wish that, we could meet in person. There's no fundraising. I don't ring doorbells. I don't get to, do the usual things to meet people at an event. But I think we've run a strong campaign. One of the things that, we are running against in my district is that it's a nonpartisan race. None of us, I don't think any of the candidates are running partisan. Although, if you take a look and see, the candidates, it is an uphill race for myself, my other Republican, candidate friend, and my libertarian friend who's a teacher, because the three of us kind of are on one side against, the other gentleman. And so it's unfortunately so partisan, this election. Usually it's based on the merits of what people have done, what are the qualifications. This time, being that we are divided into a district, it is tougher. It just depends on what your political leaning is. What I could definitely use is just word of mouth. If you guys like what you see with me, I would very much appreciate just spreading the word out, because at the end of the day, this election cycle is all about grassroots. It's really about people who appreciate what you stand for, people who know you will work hard for the teachers and the students, and getting the word out and just saying, hey, I like this. Take a look at my website. It's wu4iusd.com. And again, it's been challenging because it's not your usual where you can meet a lot of people. But I've had the fortunate chance to run. I've enjoyed the experience. I think I've been able to, speak to what I think are important in IUSD. And if elected, I would very much like to work hard for our children, because I know it is a difficult time, and we'll get through this. We all will.
Thank you. And I don't see any questions from audience. I think you have done such a good job to answer most of their questions already. I think, let me see, there's one, let me check. See. Okay, so
Josh.
Just wish you best luck. Okay.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, and so I guess that this is my last question. Also, as your close statement. So why should we vote for you?
I've been a community leader. I've been a volunteer in the classroom. I've had children who've gone through Irvine Unified School Districts. I know the challenges that are ahead of us, and I think I have the skill set and the personality to take on the task at hand. I also have the time. I do, have my own business, and so I have the time. As I mentioned in my opening statement, usually you think of this as an oversight committee that meets 2 times a month. I think whoever's going to be elected needs to put more time into all the things that we're faced with, the challenges that we're faced with. I also would like to communicate more with our parents, because I think that's the biggest challenge. I know that there's not a lot of communication between the school board, the district, and the parents. We have a lot of questions. And as a parent myself with children who are currently in IUSD, I have to say that that's the biggest key component. Is I want to make sure that we have a way that we can always keep that communications open. I'd like to get parents more involved. I'd like to have a committee that takes a look at how we open our schools. I think the parent community should have a voice and should be heard. And again, I'm happy to always be there and be somebody that you can always communicate with. So again, I think we are facing some challenges that we will get through. I'd like to think that my experience over the last decade here in Irvine can bring something positive to the school board, and I would hope to have your support and your vote. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I forgot one question, but I think it's important. Can you explain to us, like, as the school board, you said you are for Regional 3? Is that what they call?
Trustee area number 3.
Number 3. What does that include?
That's University Hills. So it's the UCI professors who live over at University Hills. It's Turtle Rock, Turtle Ridge, and a big part of Oak Creek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my area.
Okay.
But
yeah,
the person who's voted does oversee all of IUSD. They just made it into a voting district, so hopefully we'll have more representation in different parts of Irvine.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I know they just changed that recently. So
2018. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I did see that a couple of questions coming from the audience. And the first one is about integrated science. You already answered earlier. So they ask, what is your opinion? I think I just answer quickly that you really you don't think it's a great direction. So
right. I think we need more evaluation, but I don't think integrated curriculum is where it needs to be.
Okay. And the second question is, if parents don't agree with school decision, how would you resolve that?
I think there needs to be a forum. Like I said, the communication between parents and the school board is very important. Unfortunately, it can't be, that every decision is made based on, a poll. But I think that it is important to listen and take into consideration the parents' concerns. And I think that's important because sometimes, as a parent myself, I don't think of something that my other fellow, parents at school think of. So I think, in terms of giving your suggestions, that's always welcome. That is always welcome. And then as your representative, I would definitely take a look and see. We may not always have the same opinion, but I will always listen to, our parents to see what's best for our children.
And so another parent said, IUS seems not interested in offering SAT test to local students, and the kids have to go to out-of-state test center. What can you do for them?
I think that's something I think that's something that, is problematic to me. I think that standardized tests has been always the bedrock of how we, have admissions to our universities and colleges. I think it's something that we can take a look at. I don't think IUSD has ever had SAT tests in our high schools. I could be wrong. I believe Tustin Unified might be the closest that we've ever had, but certainly something that would be open, I would take a look at to see if we can bring it here, because there's no reason that parents should have to go that far out to be able to take a standardized test. I know a lot of universities this year have said that they're going to waive it, but I think, for most of us traditionalists, I think that the standardized test is still a core of our high school experience. And it should be something that, again, based on merit, that we need to go to in terms of, our college acceptance.
Okay. Thanks, Sidney. I think that's all for today. That's conclude our conversation today. Again, I want to thank you for your time and wish you the best luck for your campaign.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me today. And thank you everybody who's viewing this today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. Bye, Sidney. And so we're going to move on to John Park. And okay, thanks.
Okay, I guess I'll leave the Zoom, but good luck with everything. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye now.
Bye.
OK， 大家好啊，这个我们就完成了跟那个Sidney